Thomas was a poor rancher who lived on the edge of a dry, dusty desert. His land was small and worn, and every day was a struggle to make enough to eat. The sun rose hot and bright over his little ranch, painting the earth in shades of gold and brown. Thomas worked from early morning until late evening, tending to the few animals he had and repairing the fences that the wind and storms always tried to tear down. He had no family nearby, only his loyal dog Rusty, who followed him everywhere, and a few cacti that offered some shade in the scorching heat. Despite his hardships, Thomas was known for his kindness. The villagers often said that even though he had little, he always found a way to help anyone in need. He believed that helping others brought more joy than wealth ever could. Still, most days were lonely, and the desert seemed endless around him. He often sat on the porch in the evenings watching the sun set behind distant mountains, wondering if life would ever change. One early morning, Thomas decided to walk near the small creek that ran close to his ranch. After weeks of little rain, the creek had swelled suddenly from a rare desert storm. The water rushed over rocks and sand, carrying branches and mud along its path. Thomas had seen dangerous floods before, but he never expected what he would find that morning. From a distance, he noticed something moving in the water. At first, he thought it was a fallen tree, but as he got closer, his eyes widened in shock. There, struggling in the rushing creek, were two enormous figures much larger than any human he had ever seen. They were two Apache sisters, both towering and strong, with long dark hair plastered to their faces from the water. Their eyes were wide with fear as the current threatened to sweep them away. Thomas froze for a moment. He had heard stories of the Apache giants, rare beings of great strength and wisdom, but he had never believed he would encounter them. The villagers often warned him to stay away from such creatures, saying they brought danger to those who interfered. But looking at the sisters, he saw not danger but desperation. Something inside him stirred. He could not leave them to drown. Without thinking twice, Thomas ran to the edge of the creek. He grabbed a long rope from his wagon and tied it securely around a nearby tree. Carefully, he waded into the water, feeling the current tug at his legs. Rusty barked from the bank, his tail stiff with worry. Thomas reached one sister who was trying to keep her head above water. She was bigger than he had imagined, but he did not falter. He wrapped the rope around her and with all his strength, pulled her toward the shore. The second sister was farther downstream, her arms flailing as the water threatened to carry her away. Thomas did not hesitate. He ran along the edge, finding a fallen branch to extend to her. She grabbed it, and with a great effort, he managed to pull her to safety as well. Both sisters collapsed on the sand, breathing heavily but alive. Thomas stepped back, wiping sweat from his forehead. His heart raced, not only from the physical effort, but also from the awe of seeing such incredible beings so close. The sisters looked at him cautiously at first, as if unsure whether he meant them harm. Then slowly they began to relax. One of them reached out a hand toward him, a simple gesture of gratitude. Thomas smiled, feeling a warmth he had never felt before. The sisters could not speak his language, and he could not speak theirs, yet somehow they understood each other. Thomas brought them blankets and water, helping them recover from the shock of the flood. He noticed that their eyes held a strange intelligence, a depth that suggested they had seen much more of the world than he ever could. They ate sparingly, careful not to take too much of his meager food, but their silent presence filled his small ranch with a sense of wonder. The villagers began to notice unusual activity near Thomas's ranch. Some whispered that he had angered the spirits by helping the giants. Others, more curious, came close to catch a glimpse. Thomas did not care. For the first time in a long while, he felt a purpose beyond survival. He spent the day tending to the sisters, repairing their minor injuries with bandages and herbs he had kept for his own use. As evening fell, the desert sky turned pink and orange, and the air grew cooler. Thomas sat on his porch with Rusty at his feet, watching the sisters move gently around the ranch, testing the boundaries of their temporary refuge. They were cautious but seemed to trust him, a bond forming silently between the poor rancher and the giants he had saved. Despite the calm, Thomas felt a growing unease. Stories of Apache giants were never simple tales. They were warnings. He knew that saving the sisters might bring consequences he could not imagine. Yet he also knew that he could not abandon them. He had done what he believed was right, and sometimes he thought courage meant facing the unknown without fear. Night fell fully, and Thomas prepared a small fire for warmth. The sisters watched from a safe distance, their eyes reflecting the flickering flames. The desert was silent except for the crackle of the fire and the distant howl of a coyote. Thomas thought about the future. How would he explain their presence to anyone? How could a poor man protect such powerful beings? The questions swirled in his mind, but he felt a strange peace. For the first time, he was part of something larger than himself, something magical. Just as he began to relax, a sound shattered the quiet. From the darkness beyond the ranch, he heard the rhythmic beat of drums. At first, he thought it was the wind, but the sound grew louder and more deliberate. The ground seemed to hum with the intensity of the approaching rhythm. Thomas stood, heart pounding, and saw shadows moving toward him. Through the moonlight, a tall figure emerged, flanked by several warriors. The figure was regal, commanding, and unmistakably powerful. It was the Apache chief, the leader of the tribe to which the sisters belonged. Thomas's stomach tightened. He had no idea what the chief would do or how he would react to the sisters being on Thomas's land. The chief stopped a few feet away, his gaze fixed on Thomas. His expression was calm but carried an authority that made Thomas feel both small and exposed. He raised a hand and the drumbeat ceased immediately, leaving an eerie silence. Then, in a voice that was deep and steady, the chief spoke. "You have saved them," he said, his eyes not leaving Thomas. "But you have broken a law older than your people. You now face a choice. Your actions will decide their fate, and yours." Thomas's mind raced. He had never faced anything like this. He had acted from kindness, from a desire to help, never imagining that he would face such consequences. The sisters stood close to him, their massive forms slightly protective as if sensing the tension. Thomas took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. The night stretched, the desert holding its breath. Thomas realized that tomorrow everything could change. The choices he had made out of compassion had brought him to the edge of something extraordinary and terrifying. He sat down again, trying to steady his racing heart, knowing that sleep would be uneasy. He had saved the sisters, but the chief's words left a shadow over his small ranch. As he looked at the sisters quietly resting, Thomas felt a mix of fear and hope. He did not know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew one thing for certain. He could not turn away from what he had started. Courage, he realized, was not just in facing danger. It was in standing by what was right, even when the outcome was uncertain. The desert night was silent once more, the fire's glow soft against the cool air. Thomas closed his eyes, trying to prepare himself for what was to come. He had saved the Apache sisters, but the true test of his heart and bravery was only beginning. And somewhere deep in the desert, the drums still echoed faintly, a reminder that tomorrow would bring choices no one could ignore. The sun was already high in the sky, beating down on the desert landscape with relentless heat. The wind whispered through the rocks, carrying the dry scent of sand and wild shrubs. The protagonist, a young traveler named Alex, had been hiking for hours along the rugged trails of this remote region. He had always loved adventures, the kind that pushed him out of his comfort zone and brought him closer to nature. But today, something felt different. There was a strange tension in the air, a feeling that the desert held secrets he was about to discover. Alex's boots crunched over dry stones as he followed a narrow path that led deeper into the mountains. He paused occasionally to drink water or rest in the shade of a lone cactus, his eyes scanning the horizon for signs of movement. Suddenly, a faint sound caught his attention, a soft, almost imperceptible cry carried on the wind. He froze, listening carefully. It came again, a fragile human sound of distress. His heart raced. Could someone be in trouble here, so far from any town or road? Without hesitation, Alex began moving toward the direction of the sound, his curiosity and concern overriding caution. After walking for a few minutes, he spotted a figure in the distance. At first, it was just a shadow against the bright sand, but as he drew closer, he realized it was a woman. She was sitting on the ground, her head bowed, and she appeared to be injured. Her clothing was simple, traditional, and dusty from travel. Her hair, dark and thick, fell in tangled waves around her shoulders. Despite her evident fatigue, there was a strength in her posture, a quiet dignity that seemed unshakable. Alex approached slowly, calling out softly to avoid frightening her. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. The woman lifted her head, her eyes wary but steady. She didn't answer immediately. There was a pause, tense and uncertain, as if she were deciding whether to trust this stranger. Alex noticed a deep gash on her leg, blood dried around the wound. She winced slightly as she tried to adjust her position. Without waiting for permission, Alex knelt beside her and took out his small first aid kit from his backpack. "I can help," he said calmly. "It's going to be okay." The woman watched him carefully. Her eyes reflected caution, but also a hint of relief. Slowly, she allowed him to clean the wound and wrap it with the bandages he carried. Every movement had to be careful. One wrong gesture could frighten her. As he worked, he realized how delicate this moment was, a meeting of two people from very different worlds, both cautious, both curious. Once the bandage was secure, Alex helped her to her feet. Her weight was light, but her steps were unsteady. He offered his arm for support, and she accepted it after a moment's hesitation. They moved slowly, finding a small shaded area behind a cluster of rocks where they could rest. The sun was merciless, and the desert heat made even the simplest movement exhausting. Alex offered her water from his bottle. She took it carefully, sipping slowly, eyes scanning the horizon as if she were ready to run at any moment. As they sat together, Alex tried to speak to bridge the silence. "My name is Alex," he said. "I saw you from a distance and wanted to make sure you were safe. Do you need me to take you somewhere?" The woman shook her head slightly. She did not speak, but her eyes softened just a little, a small acknowledgement of trust. Alex realized that communication would have to be patient, careful, and respectful. He respected her silence, understanding that trust could not be rushed. Time passed slowly. The sun shifted in the sky, casting long shadows over the rocky landscape. Alex kept a careful watch, ready to move at a moment's notice. He noticed her glancing at the horizon occasionally, as if searching for something familiar or fearing danger. He felt a mixture of admiration and empathy. She was clearly strong, resourceful and independent, yet vulnerable in her current situation. As the day went on, Alex shared some of his water and a small amount of food he had packed. The woman accepted without hesitation, and for the first time, she offered a small, faint smile. It was brief, but it carried warmth and relief, a silent thank you for his help. Alex felt a sense of connection, fragile but real, between them. It was not just a rescue. It was the beginning of a human bond forged under unusual circumstances. Eventually, Alex realized they needed to find a safer place. The desert was unpredictable, and the afternoon heat was beginning to wane, making nightfall an approaching danger. He suggested moving toward a sheltered area he had seen earlier, a small natural alcove formed by rocks that could provide protection from the elements. The woman nodded, standing with his support, her movements still cautious but deliberate. The journey to the alcove was slow. Alex helped her navigate uneven terrain, pointing out loose rocks and guiding her steps. Occasionally, she would pause and glance back, as if ensuring that he was still following her lead. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a silent dialogue of trust and mutual respect. It was a delicate balance. He wanted to help without overstepping, and she was learning to accept help without surrendering her independence. Once they reached the alcove, Alex arranged some of his supplies to make a temporary resting area. He cleared the ground, laid out a blanket, and encouraged her to sit. The woman watched him carefully, then, after a moment, eased herself down onto the blanket. She was exhausted but seemed calmer now, her breathing steadier, her posture more relaxed. Alex took a seat a short distance away, careful not to crowd her space. He looked around at the surrounding desert, noting how the colors changed as the sun lowered in the sky. The rocks glowed golden, the sand deepened to warm amber, and the sky stretched out in a canvas of soft orange and pink. Despite the danger and exhaustion, the scene held a quiet beauty, a reminder of why he had ventured into this wilderness in the first place. As they rested, the woman finally spoke. Her voice was soft but firm, carrying a musical quality that reflected her heritage. She spoke in her native language, and though Alex could not understand the words, he sensed gratitude, a willingness to communicate, and perhaps a promise. She then reached into a small pouch she carried and pulled out a tiny object, holding it toward him briefly before tucking it back inside. Alex's curiosity was piqued. He didn't understand its meaning yet, but he felt the weight of the gesture. Night approached, and the desert temperature dropped. Alex built a small, contained fire, careful to follow safety measures. The flames cast flickering shadows across the alcove, illuminating the woman's features. She watched the fire silently, occasionally glancing at him with a faint, almost enigmatic expression. Alex wondered what she was thinking, what stories she carried from her life in the mountains and deserts of her ancestors. As the stars began to appear, sparkling like tiny diamonds across the darkening sky, Alex reflected on the day's events. He had set out on a simple hike, seeking adventure and the beauty of nature, but he had found something far more profound, a human connection born from compassion, trust, and courage. He felt a deep respect for the woman before him, for her strength, resilience, and quiet dignity. He also felt a sense of anticipation, a curiosity about what she might offer in return for his help. There was a mystery in her eyes, a sense that this encounter was not just about survival, but about something more significant, something that could leave a lasting impression on both of their lives. As the night deepened, Alex prepared to rest, keeping a careful watch by the fire. The woman had settled, her breathing calm, her body relaxed in a rare moment of safety. He knew this was only the beginning of their story, and that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new discoveries, and perhaps the revelation of the secret she held for him. With the desert quiet around them, and the stars as silent witnesses, Alex closed his eyes for a brief moment, thinking about the journey ahead, the bond they were forming, and the unexpected ways in which life could bring two people together. He did not know what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain: helping her had changed him already, and whatever she would offer in return, it would be something unforgettable. Word count: 1,300 words.